A few months back we learned that Alexstrasza is going to betray Tyr, which is a future event, which got many of us to believe that she will be corrupted by the old gods, as this was, after all, an old god vision. However, recent cinematics, data mine info, and the fact that we may be seeing the Titans themselves coming to Azeroth quite soon completely changes that perspective. If Iridikron actually beats the Titans, we could be seeing their true face, and that they only care about the world soul, not the aspects, not the life, and maybe not even about the Titan Keepers. We could be seeing both Tyr and Alexstrasza rebelling against them, and we could be in for some serious chaos. Are we going to be fighting against the Titans together with Alexstrasza, and what is even going on? If you guys want to buy Total War, Elder Scrolls, or any other game, you can get them at great prices with my Gamivo link. You can also get anything Warcraft related, gift cards and software, and all below market prices. Best of all, if you add my code DORON, you can get an even bigger discount, so make sure to check out my link in the description and get some amazing deals with Gamivo. So, a lot of talk has been about Blizzard retconning the Titans, especially in Dragonflight, and turning them evil, but really, they were pretty grey and even dark in the past when you really look into it, when you examine the previous lore. I mean, do you guys remember this brilliant line from Algalon the Observer from Ulduar, all the way back from Brad? I have seen worlds bathed in the Maker's flames, their denizens fading without so much as a whimper, entire planetary systems born and raised in the time that it takes your mortal hearts to beat once. Yet all throughout, my own heart devoid of emotion, of empathy, I have felt nothing. A million lives wasted. Had they all held within them your tenacity, had they owed life as you do. As you may know, Algalon was a guy that the Titans had placed on Azeroth in order to wipe out the entire planet if the old gods broke free. I mean, he obviously tells us that these guys wiped out entire planets in the blink of an eye so that the old gods can get them. We are now learning that they aren't even really the saviors and that each cosmological force has their own goals, so realistically, they obviously don't plan anything good for Azeroth, they're just using it as a tool to enhance their stuff. We've even learned in Dragonflight that they more than likely are purposefully corrupting it and turning it into a being of order. Now, if you may remember, a few months back we got this cool cinematic from the Tyr questline where we learned that Alexstrasza will betray Tyr, and most of us believe that this would be related to her falling into old god whispers, just like Neltharion, because this was a vision from an old god general of Yogg-Saron, and by the all other recent development, this might actually turn out to be a conscious decision, and she may be breaking free from all this thousands of years of brainwashing and realizing that she was a victim just like the Primal Incarnates. If you remember the Tyr cinematic, it was a flashback to Tyr's when he was escaping with the Titan Forge, what would later become humans, dwarves, gnomes, and he starts fighting Zakaz, one of the old god generals, who shows him that his most beloved creation will fail him as well, the aspects, and he essentially shows exactly what happened thousands and thousands of years later, and he also presented him the betrayal of Alexstrasza that has still not happened, which means obviously this is going to be a future event. Why this is super relevant is because we know a big new Tyr questline is coming quite soon. We have data mined some pretty long cinematics that we don't really even know what they are at the moment, but they're gonna be long. Also, in this one that was released a few months back, the very obvious focal point of this entire thing was Alexstrasza and the aspects. The Tyr stuff was more just like the background of it. This wasn't a way for us, to see Tyr, but it was obviously a setup for the dragon storyline. One thing that is really interesting to keep in mind is that all the failure of the aspects were certain types of events, but Alexstrasza was completely different. She didn't say she will die, she will do this, she will do that, she will turn into an old god minion. She just says, I will also betray. Deathwing fell to the old gods, Malygos turned crazy, started guarding magic, Ysera died, as we had obviously seen quite recently, and we always knew about Dormu and Murazon thing. On the other hand, the Alexstrasza event doesn't really show anything, just the betrayal that is going to happen. Now, when we combine this with some of the data mine information, the new Iridikron cinematic, and also the newest Vyranoth cinematic, we can start seeing the clearer picture as we put the puzzle pieces together. Vyranoth, as you know, is one of the Primal Incarnates, and we will actually learn what really happened back in the day in the new book that comes out this October, but from the later information that we have now, Vyranoth used to be really close to Alexstrasza Alexstrasza, and from the new cinematic, it seems like she cannot forgive her at all for what she did. We also, if you examine it, see a bit of a different side of Alexstrasza, the one that is full of regret, realizing that she may have been wrong. Instead of being the savior of Azeroth, just chaining these bad guys, she may have been one of the baddies. She obviously forced these guys into slumber as they had defeated the Incarnates. However, we learned that Alexstrasza apparently promised that she will not force the Titan will upon the dragons, yet she did. The Titans had, as Vyranoth says, warped their children in the shell, and Alexstrasza helped them, and this is something she regrets every day of her life. This is most certainly the event that involved the brainwashing waters that Tyr had ejected that we learned about previously. Initially, this led to the creation of Galakron, and then order was put into the pools to corrupt the Dragon X. Now, something that is really interesting is what Vyranoth says, and that is first that Alexstrasza is naive and that the world is no longer what it is and what it was in the past, and honestly, I think this is a huge foreshadowing for what is going to be happening in the future. The Titans, as they had defeated the old gods that obviously weren't nice, were definitely seen as the saviors at the time, but over the course of history and their actions, this definitely started changing. Now, Iridikron is working with Zealothat on most likely doing something with the world soul that will eventually bait the Titans themselves to come to the planet of Azeroth. As you may know, in the past, they were just too powerful to arrive in person, but now that they have been weakened, they have the form to do it. Honestly, I feel like this is going to have two massive implications. First is that they may leave the prison of Sargeras unattended, which could have some really good things happening, but even more importantly, they're going to finally show their true face, which will get the aspects to split away from them. As Iridikron says, they only really care for the world soul, and all this life stuff, these life things, is just a ploy to nurture that goal. He says they will not come when these guys are attacking us, they will only come when he is going to draw them out. In my opinion, this means that the world soul may be critically close to being corrupted, and they will have no other choice but to arrive. When they realize they could be losing, they're going to show us what they really are, and that we really are nothing to them. We're going to be like one of the million lives they had previously wiped out with their mechanism. Tyr could potentially be coming back. He's almost certainly coming back in some way, and I feel like Alexstrasza and Tyr might be a huge storyline that could be coming soon. Maybe even Tyr himself will realize that the Titans are not good and he could also rebel. After all, it isn't unprecedented. We already know a group of Titanforge could rebel against the Order. We could likely be seeing Odin coming as well, although I could see him being on the side of the Titans. An interesting thing that could happen with Tyr is a Nazgrim scenario. You know, like how when Nazgrim realized that Garrosh was a bad guy, we were fighting him, he knew we were right, he obviously was not doing nice things, but for Nazgrim, the loyalty was just a bigger priority for him, and unfortunately, we had to defeat him. However, it is also possible that just like how the Titan Keepers saw the Titanforge as tools, the Titans are going to do the same thing to the Keepers, as hierarchy is a really big deal for beings of order, so even Tyr may become disenchanted by his own creators. Obviously, the vision says that Alexstrasza is going to betray Tyr himself, and this means that she realizes what is really going on and that they were really nothing but tools that were used to further the goals of Order. However, Tyr could ultimately also see Alexstrasza's perspective and realize that he's just like her, but just in a different part of the hierarchy. If this really happens, this is going to be some just insane chaos all over. I mean, imagine us fighting Iridikron, Zealothat, and who even knows who they're working with, and then the Titans arrive doing their own thing, and we have to rebel against them and fight them with Alexstrasza and Tyr. I mean, we could be in for some really crazy times. Thank you for watching. Check out a possible restoration of Mother City by clicking on the screen, and check out my newest video on the Wild Hunt, Witcher, and real world mythology. See you next time!